we got some massive news that the Montreal Canadiens are looking to move up in the NHL draft. Some people saying up to number 4, some saying that they're targeting the Anaheim Ducks pick at number 2 for Adam Fantilli. So I'll be diving into that, what it could mean for Montreal and what it can mean for those other teams. Plus, the Habs fired 2 of their head athletic staff, which is maybe a bit expected after the disastrous last couple of seasons with injuries. That on more on this edition of Habs Digest. So let's just get right into it. The first thing, again, I want to talk about is that they want to trade up in the draft. This is surprisingly huge news. I mean, we knew Montreal was looking around. We know Kent Hughes, we know Jeff Gorton are going to be looking into every option possible when it comes to the draft. But even then, this kind of surprised me. So let's take a look. This is from Arpen Basu at The Athletic, and he said, "We can also confirm a report from Radio-Canada colleague Alexandre Gascon on Wednesday morning that the Canadiens are trying everything they can to move up in the draft. The report cites their effort to swap picks with the Sharks at number 4, but the Canadiens have also contacted the Anaheim Ducks to see what it would take to move up to number 2. The cost would likely be astronomical to get from number 5 to number 2, but when a player like Adam Fantilli is available, doing your due diligence to determine that cost is a necessity. The chances of a trade-up materializing remain very slim, but the Canadiens are definitely trying." So here's Gascon's original tweet in French saying that they want to go up to at least number 4. This actually doesn't mention the Adam Fantilli thing, but let's talk about this. Because there's kind of a lot to digest here, right? So Montreal has picked number 5, and now we know for a fact, now that the Vegas Golden Knights have won the Stanley Cup, the Florida Panthers pick that gets brought to Montreal is actually a number 31. So the Habs have picked 5 and 31, and I believe 37 in the draft in the second round. So some people I'm seeing are saying, well, let's try and package 5, 31, and 37 to move up to number 4. But here's the problem with that. We've heard a lot of rumors in the last day or two. We thought Michkov and the Sharks were linked closely together, but in the last couple of days, it's become a lot more evident that Will Smith is probably the Sharks guy and that Leo Carlsson is probably going at number 3 to Columbus. And if that is true, Montreal, again, as we kind of expected, is sort of forced to choose between Michkov, who it really seems like they're probably not going to pick, but we don't really know much about. We're probably going to not talk too much about Michkov. We talk about him a lot. Between Reinbacher, Ryan Leonard, Zach Benson, something like that. But if Montreal can move up to number 4, they're guaranteed either Will Smith or Leo Carlsson, probably Will Smith. And we know Kent Hughes loves Will Smith. When they watched the U.S. National Development Team, well, a lot of the players on that team over in Europe at the World Championships, they fell in love with Ryan Leonard and Will Smith. And we know Will Smith is an amazing prospect, and Kent Hughes has not been shy about saying that. So it makes sense for the Habs to try and target him. However, if you're the San Jose Sharks, what do you do in this situation? Because in my mind, if the rumors that the Sharks wanted someone like Michkov were true, and they know Montreal is targeting that number 4 pick to get Will Smith, if I'm the Sharks, it might not take a ton to go from number 5 to number 4. Because if the Sharks are still high on Michkov, and to them, it doesn't really matter if they take him at number 5, and they know the Habs are taking Will Smith, maybe you take just 5 and 31 plus, I don't know, maybe a future second or third round pick. And that's it for the Sharks, right? Because you know you're getting your guy. If you guys watch the NBA, it reminds me a bit of the Luka Doncic, Trae Young trade, or maybe the Markelle Fultz for Jason Tatum and a future first round pick. Now that trade ended up being terrible for the Philadelphia 76ers, but enough basketball talking. So if Montreal wants to get number 4, I truly believe that it might not be that hard. Like, I feel like Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton, if they get that opportunity, they're going to do it. It really seems like they don't want to take Michkov. It seems like they want to take Will Smith. So I think if they want to make that happen for San Jose, and San Jose likes Michkov, that's very possible. Where we run into a snag is number 5 for number 2. Adam Fantilli is basically a guaranteed star, similar to Connor Bedard, and depending on your position, similar to Matvei Michkov. However, Fantilli, you know, is going to be ready to play in the NHL extremely soon. He is an amazing, amazing prospect. Will go number 1 in almost any other draft, realistically. In any other draft that doesn't have Connor Bedard, he would have 100% gone number 1 last year instead of Juraj Slafkovsky. So Adam Fantilli is a guy that's going to cost a pretty penny, especially if you're the Anaheim Ducks and you're trying to keep rebuilding. You got Trevor Zegras now. He's sort of the face of your franchise. There's a few little parts of their team that they need to fix up over the course of the next couple of years before they're fully done this rebuild. But if you're the Ducks, you want these young stars and you want someone like Adam Fantilli. So this one I'm not so sure about. And let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, because I don't understand it from Anaheim's perspective. Why would you give up on Adam Fantilli unless you're the Ducks and you do really like Michkov? I think a lot of this, I said I wasn't going to talk about Michkov, but I think I kind of have to, or else this whole segment doesn't make sense, because to me, and let me know if you guys agree, for a trade like this to happen, a lot of the thought process and a lot of the agreements will have to be contingent on how much these other teams value Matvei Michkov as a prospect. Because if Anaheim sees him, like many people do, as almost as talented as Connor Bedard, you just got to wait a few years, and they're okay with that, and they can get him at number 5, they speak to San Jose, they speak to Columbus, or maybe whatever they do, then sure, maybe they can do it. And the same thing with the Sharks earlier. So, but I just don't see a world. Well, I mean, I guess there's another world where, say, the San Jose Sharks see Will Smith as an amazing prospect. If Montreal can somehow get to 4 and then flip that for number 2, and then Anaheim moves down and gets Will Smith, or maybe they like Ryan Leonard, something like that. But regardless, I think the jump from 5 to 2 is extremely unrealistic. I think maybe if you're Anaheim, you're probably starting with Juraj Slafkovsky on the table, right? I think you're probably saying, look, Montreal, if you really want this number 2 pick, you're going to give us your number 5 and Juraj Slafkovsky or something. And if you're Montreal, I don't think you do that, right? It's one of those cases where the price that Anaheim is going to demand for the number 2 pick is just not going to be something Montreal's willing to pay. Like, I don't think that's worth it. I think Slav is going to be awesome, and I think whoever Montreal gets at number 5 is also going to be really good. So again, it's going to come down to who does Anaheim value as a prospect in this draft or on the team that they're trading with, and again, like, who they're going to start with on Montreal. Like, if they start with Slafkovsky, do you just hang up the phone? I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. I've talked about this a lot. Let's move on to the final thing I wanted to talk about in this video. And that's the Habs firing some medical staff. Now, this is a bit of a, not as much of a story as the other thing. I really wanted to talk about that because I saw that news and I just needed to make a video for you guys, right? Like, it was super exciting stuff. But let's get into this. So, Tony Marinaro tweeted, breaking, hearing that Donald Balmforth and Graham Reinband, head athletic therapist and head physio of the Canadiens Montreal, have been relieved of their duties. So, what does this mean? Well, if you're like me, you've probably never heard these names much more than just in passing, especially on, in some articles talking about the Habs medical staff and issues. I've seen these names a bit before, but the question remains, like, why? And is this a good thing? And I think it is a good thing. I think that Montreal, we shown some graphs earlier this year, that Montreal has been one of the most injured teams in the NHL for the last 2 seasons, and even like 3 or 4 seasons. Montreal has never been amazing with injuries unless you go back 7-8 years. So I think a change needed to happen. But again, if you're going into your head physio and head athletic therapist, I feel like that's what you've got to do, right? Because those are the guys that, look, if you get that job, you're taking that responsibility onto yourselves to truly treat the players and to make sure the players are as healthy as they can be. Now, again, I know a lot of injuries were freak, and I'm not out there saying it's these guys' fault that a lot of these players ended up getting hurt, like Slafkovsky's was freak, Caufield's shoulder. It's not something that they did, but there's a lot of minor injuries here and there, players not recovering properly, things like that there was enough concern within the Habs organization that I think they made this decision knowing that, okay, we need to have someone else in charge to see if things change. And I don't think this is a quick decision, a rash decision, anything like that, because Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton have been talking about this for a while, for months now, and they mentioned that in the offseason they were probably going to make some changes when it comes to the medical staff if they deemed it reasonable, and I guess they did. When I see this kind of thing, based on what I've heard from Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton and the way they've talked about hiring, firing, changing up staff, I don't think this is just a quick decision because Montreal had all the injuries the fans were complaining. No, I think they must have done a thorough investigation and saying, like, listen, there probably needs to be some culture change. So I think it's overall a good thing. I think we'll hopefully see some changes next year in terms of injury recovery, but I guess that'll have to be seen. But that'll do it for this edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, a comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us reach 6K subs. We're less than 100 away. I'm Josh Gosse. We'll catch you in the next one.